NJS bikes are some of my favorite bikes ever produced, and fixed gear riders still really value NJS bikes and components for their bomb-proof durability, their really fun ride quality, and their unmistakable, timeless, and classy designs. But maybe you're wondering, what the heck are NJS bikes? What does NJS even stand for? What makes NJS bikes and components special? Should I even care? Today, we'll answer those questions. This is NJS Bikes Explained. What's up? I'm Zach Gallardo. Life is short, but don't make it shorter, so be sure to ride your bike every day to be reasonably dangerous, and hit the like button and subscribe so YouTube knows to recommend you more fixed gear videos just like this one. And speaking of NJS bikes, to learn more about what exactly gives steel bikes their buttery smooth and lively ride quality, feel free to check out the video I made with our channel sponsor Wabi Cycles when we talk in depth about steel tubing. In that video, we talk about the specific types of steel and how builders choose steel to balance weight, durability, and ride quality. Check out the steel tubing video by clicking the card above or by sticking around until the end of the video. Firstly, what does NJS even stand for? Well, I'm embarrassed to admit it, but I didn't know until I researched for this video, but it stands for Nihon Jitensha Shinkokai. I probably butchered that, but that's Japanese for the Japanese Bicycle Association, which is basically like the Japanese UCI. The NJS organization is the governing body for Japanese Keirin racing. They set the rules, they organize the races, they crown the champions, and they say what exactly an NJS bike needs to be in order to be eligible for a Keirin race. But firstly, what the heck is a Keirin race? Keirin racing is the Japanese form of track cycling, where racers ride on brakeless fixed gears on a velodrome. The riders will stay behind a pacer until the last lap and a half, where they make a mad sprint for the finish. Keirin racing was founded in 1948 or 1949 as a legal gambling sport for Japan to raise money for the post-war Japanese government. And a lot of money, if I may add. Today, Keirin racing is still a betting sport in Japan, and people bet around $10 billion every year on Keirin races. They're high stakes stuff. To put in perspective how big Keirin racing in Japan is, people bet about the same amount of money on Keirin racing in Japan every year as on sports in Las Vegas. Keirin racing is still a huge part of the Japanese cycling culture, and it even has its own culture in itself. In order for racers to be qualified to participate in Keirin races in Japan, they must graduate from a Japanese Keirin school, complete with intense training schedules, etiquette classes, and exams. Keirin racing has also branched outside of Japan, with the UCI and the Olympics hosting events and world championships. That's all said and good, but what the heck are NJS bikes and components? An entire NJS bike is one where every single component on the bike is NJS stamped. That means the NJS organization has approved those components for Keirin racing in Japan. And when I say every single component has to be NJS approved, and I mean every single component, from the frame to the stem and the handlebars to the cranks, the wheels, the tires, even down to the lock ring, needs to have that NJS stamp of approval. NJS stamped components abide by strict specifications and are made by NJS approved manufacturers. And getting that NJS certification is a difficult process in itself. The reasoning behind creating that NJS certified stamp was to, one, make sure that the playing field is level for the racers so that no rider has an advantage from their bike, so it could be a gambling sport in Japan and raise money for the government. And the second reason that stamp exists is to protect domestic Japanese bicycle manufacturers from outside competition, which was especially important post-World War II. Because of that, the vast majority of NJS frame builders and component manufacturers are Japanese. There was a brief time where Easton and Campagnolo both were NJS certified and produced NJS stamped components, but they decided that it wasn't profitable enough to keep doing so, so they stopped their NJS production. Some NJS frame builders include 3 Rensho, Makino, Nagasawa, Panasonic, Yes, the Panasonic that manufactures televisions, and Bridgestone, many of which are one-man operations. producing only custom-made frame sets for professional racers. NJS component manufacturers include Nitto for stems and seat posts, Sugino for cranks, Shimano for hubs and drivetrain components, Hata for headsets and bottom brackets, MKS for pedal components, and many more. The NJS stamp is famous for requiring frame sets and component manufacturers to abide by extremely stringent specifications and extremely high quality control for weight, durability, strength, performance, and even finish. Again, these strict components are to ensure that there's a level playing field in the races to make Keirin racing a gambling sport. The bikes that the racers use more or less need to be equal to each other so that nobody has an advantage or a disadvantage from their equipment, because the bettors are betting on the racers, not on who has the best bike. Complete NJS bikes are going to perform almost identically and ride almost identically. The components are made to an extremely high standard because racers are only allowed to use one bike for the entire about 1 week event. If their equipment is damaged or malfunctioned and they can't find a way to replace or fix it, then they're out of the races for the week and they lose their chance at earning prize money, and everybody that bets on that racer also loses out on their money. Because so much money is at stake, it is super important that the components are extremely reliable. And in order to be reliable, get that NJS stamp of approval and be used in Keirin races, components have to abide by a lot of restrictions. And since the strictest requirements are reserved for the men's bikes, let's take a look at some of those restrictions. Frames must be handmade out of lightweight double-butted chromoly steel from the brand Fixie with lugged construction, undrilled in the fork and brake bridge, made with specific geometry from a certified NJS builder. Bikes must use 1-inch threaded headsets and stems. Wheels must be 36 spokes in the front and rear, constructed entirely out of NJS certified components. Cranksets must be 144 BCD. Clipless pedals are forbidden. Instead, racers must use certified toe clips and straps with slotted cleats. Saddles must have a 30mm rail width as opposed to the industry standard of 44mm rails. And it goes without saying, in this extremely traditional form of cycling, absolutely no carbon components are allowed for the men's races, and there's also much more restrictions. If you're curious about how much all this equipment with extremely high standards for quality control costs, you can expect to pay around $1,800 US for a component set and around $2,000 to $5,000 for a brand new custom-made NJS frame set, depending on which builder you go with. That is, once the builder gets around to actually building your bike, which can take a few months to a couple years of wait time. To a modern fixed gear rider, that is someone who doesn't race Keirin professionally in Japan, NJS components can seem unnecessarily expensive and even antiquated. Because no, NJS components won't give you the ultimate performance out of your bike. Yes, SRAM Omniums are stiffer than Sugino 75s. Yes, an aluminum track frame set will have a better stiffness to weight ratio than the thin, light, and skinny tubing of a steel NJS bike. And yes, SPD SL pedals will give you better power transfer than NJS stamped MKS custom Nuevo pedal setup. To a performance-oriented cyclist, NJS components can seem like a waste of money. Why in the world do so many fixed gear riders absolutely adore NJS components? Well, they balance craftsmanship, performance, and reliability, and there's nothing quite like them. Ultimate performance isn't the point of NJS components, and it isn't the reason people ride fixed gear in the first place. Fixed gear riding is all about building a bike you love with bomb-proof reliability and finding fun on bikes that are inherently very limited. Part of the fun is using the wrong tool for the job and making it work. Riding an aggressive, brakeless track bike comes with a set of challenges that you wouldn't run into if you always use the best performing bike for the job. Can I tank this pothole, or will I end up going to the dentist? What's my plan B if I can't sprint fast enough to catch that light? Can I handle the screaming in my legs and lungs enough to make it to the top of this mountain? NJS bikes embody the spirit of fixed gear cycling. They're dang cool and strictly, sometimes unnecessarily limited, which gives you a unique and fun experience. In a world where there's a new and improved bottom bracket standard every 5 years, fixed gear riders, perhaps more than any other cycling discipline, are skeptical of cycling innovations, and we really value what's been proven to work over years and years. While the cycling industry has certainly made advancements for better performing bikes, NJS parts perform well enough for daily street riding, and you arguably won't notice a difference between them and more modern components unless you have monster track thighs. They feel really good to ride, and they're a ton of fun to ride. They also ooze timeless design and masterful craftsmanship, making them a joy to own and even just look at with their ornate lugs, thin, elegant tubing, classy sparkle paint jobs, and quiet but refined finishes on the components. NJS's deep tradition embodies the sentiment of a bygone era where stuff was made to last a lifetime and not just to hold you off until your next upgrade. With NJS, things aren't done for the sake of being cost-effective or expedient. NJS parts are made the old-fashioned way, some would say to a fault, to strict, exacting, and unyielding, unchanging standards. Fixed gear riders today also appreciate the sense of history with NJS parts. A big reason the NJS stamp even exists is to make sure that there's a level playing field for Japanese track racing so they can make it a gambling sport. And the fact that if you buy a used NJS frame, you're buying a frame that was custom made by a master Japanese craftsman for a professional racer to use so people could bet good money on him or her. It's just badass. I've never owned an NJS bike because I'm a bit too reasonable with my money, and 58 centimeter steel frame sets aren't exactly in demand in Japan. But every single person that I've talked to that owns an NJS bike has been pretty dang pleased with their purchases. When you see an NJS rider, you know for sure that person absolutely loves fixed gear. They love the history, they love the craftsmanship, they love the pure joy of riding an exquisitely crafted steel bike. And they love all these aspects of fixed gear enough to pay a real pretty penny for those bikes that are impractical on paper. People don't ride NJS bikes because they make sense. Just like how people don't drive classic Mustangs or eat $20 burgers because it makes sense. People ride NJS bikes because they serve a function really well while also being an absolute joy to own and use. And they help you to connect with other people who also share this same irrational love for fixed gear cycling and fixed gear history. Did I miss any important history or points about NJS bikes or Keirin racing? Let me know in the comments and let's keep the discussion going. And if you like NJS bikes and other finely crafted steel bikes, feel free to check out this video where we explain what exactly goes into choosing steel tubing to make a bike come to life. And Fixie famous shout out to Stan Strong 108 and Ryan Witt for supporting the channel on Patreon and helping to make these fixed gear videos possible.